What you can learn from the worst film ever made, the latest from the Cannes Film Festival, and we show you what camera you should take to go and make a documentary with. Coming up on A Girl and a Gun.
A Girl and a Gun, episode 9, recorded the 30th of May 2013. Best and worst.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
Hello, welcome to A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I am Phil Moore without my subtitle, and you're John Maisels.
And I'd be John Maisels. Hello, everybody. And I don't have a subtitle either. Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah,
yes,
John,
I do.
John got
Excellent.
his. I didn't get my
Excellent. And my tip for the week is if you think curried egg sandwiches are bad, just drink half a bottle of soft drink and then run up a flight of stairs and go on air.
You're going to open every show with a talk about food, what you had for lunch?
I'm not going to talk about what I had for lunch, but I might talk about things that you don't actually want to do before you go on camera.
One thing I did want to start with, we had a question just before about what exactly is this pin
Oh, there?
you usually wear to the show?
That's my SMPTE badge.
SMPTE badge?
Yes, the Society of Motion
What does
Picture
it
and Television
represent?
Engineers. It says that I'm a fellow of the Society. That's what it's read.
You're a fellow.
I am.
You're a fellow. I'm a
am.
fellow. Not a fellow of
Can I just say,
SMPTE,
I
though.
wasn't responsible for that. We didn't rehearse that bit. It isn't my fault. We take no responsibility for Fillmore Incorporated.
Okay, I take responsibility for myself, and I'm going to take responsibility for going to the breaking news of this week. Breaking news. Here we go. We've got a few things to get through today, so let's start. Cinematographers are in the crosshairs. Again, this is a report from IF magazine. This is from Brendan Swift at IF. What this comes down to is a lot of films lately, it used to be that when a film was made in Australia, it'd be an Australian crew, Australian cast, all that kind of things. It's an Australian film. And even though we might import actors, we never really imported cinematographers. Well, there's quite a few films now that are actually importing cinematographers for what is technically an Australian film. And it says, a bit further down the page here, these decisions raise the concern of the MEAA, Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance, and the Australian Cinematographer Society, the ACS. We don't like this at all because we think it sets a precedent, says the ACS President Ron Johannesson. Our argument is on non-taxpayer-funded films. So because these are Screen Australia funded, should they be importing cinematographers?
I can see Ron and I coming to fisticuffs on this, and maybe he can explain his position, but I actually don't quite understand that. Surely, if you take that position, which is, you're not allowed to call it an Australian film unless it's Australian people in Australia, well, then what happens to Australians who are working in Hollywood? Does that mean no Australian cinematographer can go to Hollywood and work there? Because then it becomes not a Hollywood film.
The article opens saying how many of our wonderful cinematographers have worked and won Oscars overseas.
Yes.
Dion Beebe, Russell Boyd, Andrew Leslie, John Seal, Dean Semler.
Yeah.
You know, but can we not do the same thing in reverse? Or is it just the argument that we shouldn't do it on a government-funded film?
I don't think it matters where the funding comes from. Surely it's about the gig working and making a profit.
Well, but this is a very new phenomenon, apparently. It's never happened with cinematographers, and so, of course, the unions would like to see Australian people on what are arguably Australian films.
But, like, don't get me wrong, I'm very keenly, I think it's very keenly important that Australians get work. So I'm not suggesting that we should do things that prevent Australians from getting work. I'm suggesting that the Australians working here or somebody else working here doesn't change whether or not it's an Australian film.
No, you're quite right. They've done it with actors for many, many years.
Sure.
We do it with directors every now and then. That foreign people come in and work on our films. Not the Great Gatsby is Australian film necessarily, but that's obviously there's a lot of foreign actors in that.
Yeah, look, shoot me down, but if it makes the film more successful, let's bring anybody we can and then keep the money in the country and give people work.
I think because there's so few films being made in this country, comparatively speaking, it's like, well, there's only that many high-end jobs.
Sure.
Anyway, that's the argument. Cinematographers they're now in the same boat as actors have been for many, many years, frankly. On cinematography, again, talking about the ACS, the veteran cinematographer Jonathan Rossiter was named Australian Cinematographer of the Year for his work on a short film, which not only was it a short film, it was a stop-motion film.
And this is an absolutely wonderful piece.
Just run that. If you could run the video, please, while we have a chat here. Rossiter won the award for the animated short called Sleight of Hand, directed by Anifex founder Michael Cusack. He's worked for Anifex for the past 28 years, so Sleight of Hand took the golden tripod in the experimental and specialised category as well.
And it's a very interesting piece of work. It looks like a sort of a mix somewhere between Aardman and Tim Burton. You know, it has that sort of angular look of Tim Burton, but it sort of also has a bit of the lovely feel of Wallace and Gromit.
But imagine winning Cinematographer of the Year for a 1-minute animated stop-motion short, compared to all the people that have worked on TV and features and everything else. And this is
But how long does it take to produce this? Just look at what he's doing there. It's not, he's doing a rotation, the camera is going up and down, so it's like simulating a crane shot with stop motion. And whether or not this looks jerky when you see it back on whatever you're watching this podcast with, it looks lovely.
You think he won on the strength of the fact that there's one flowing tracking shot in what is actually an animation? Because that was hard to achieve, and to get the lighting right and everything for that.
Well, it's everything about this is absolutely lovely. Just watch the eyes here on this bit, and he turns it, and then the eyes open and close again. And you go, what is the story behind that? What have we just seen?
Again, he's working with candlelight, but it's an animation. It's not a real candle necessarily. No, well, I can understand. Cinematographers would look at that and think, okay, how did he actually achieve that?
So
effect?
what you see in that clip is you see technical achievement, you see really nice cinematography, and there is story even in just that little clip.
Even just a minute, yes,
Yeah.
with no dialogue.
With no dialogue at all.
So the film itself is a lovely little film. It's just, I just find it unusual that he wins it for, that's all you need.
Good on him. Oh,
1
no,
minute
no, a big achievement.
Yeah, 1 minute of great showreel material, that's all you need. Which was actually meant to be your story coming up, John? I forget.
The next one, which is the brushless Aegis gimbal. So we've been talking a little bit about the devices that you hold with two hands, move them around, and they stabilise the camera. This is sort of like the two-handed holding equivalent of the Steadicam.
Once that movie came out, everyone's coming out with their own version.
Well, this one's interesting. It's driven. So if you have a look at the clip here, and we just run this, you can see the guy's got this gimbal, which he's holding in one hand while riding a bike in the other. And the gimbal has play the clip, and it's completely stabilised the video as it goes. So, you know, bikes are not stable things at the best of times, and he is holding the gimbal with one hand. And you can see there, it's totally stabilised. So we'll just stop that for a second. The way this works is that there are little motors that drive the gimbal. So as you move, as you change the frame of reference, the motors actually correct the platform and stabilise it. That's how it works. Well, the electronics to do this has some unexpected effects. So I don't know if we can play the second clip here. We're having a little bit of trouble playing it before, but with the second clip, when we play this, you'll notice that they had some really nasty, high squeaky audio, which you can hear there. So this was a result of driving the gimbals.
We'll turn that off, please.
And stop it, you wuss.
I hate high frequencies like that.
Maybe you do. This was a result of driving the mechanism at 8 kilohertz, which put it, okay, we can stop that. We can stop that. We can actually stop that. Which put the effect right in the middle of the audio band. So they fixed that by moving to a frequency that's ultrasonic, which would only affect dogs. Well, it's interesting talking about dogs. Let's have a look at the third clip that they show on the website, which is really very, very cute. And it shows the result of tracking the gimbal through a series of, everyday life. Now, what you see in the bottom left corner is the view from the cinematographer. What you see on the screen is what they're getting. And this all looks really wonderful at the moment. Between the two cars, go down, pick up the woman in the distance, here comes the dog. Now comes the problem, and this is the unexpected piece, which is he can't move quickly enough to follow the dog. You turn the gimbal around quickly and the system says, unwanted movement, and it cancels it out. And now he can't really follow the dog, and he makes this comment on the clip.
Right.
So, okay, good system, great idea.
As long as you don't get too
certainly stabilises the video, but there are downsides, and well, we're not quite state of the art yet.
Right. So, did they have a price for that? Some shots would take this with a Hero 3.
Lots of money.
Lots of money.
Megabytes.
Probably not 15,000 like the movie, though. Okay, next up. Again, just a reminder, Ryan E. Walters, cinematographer. He's got a great blog, ryanewalters.com. There's a new entry on that this week called 3 Reasons by fixing it in post will ruin your career.
Yeah.
I'm often guilty, often as a director, saying, we'll fix that in post. And my cinematographer, can't we just do it in camera? It looks better.
And that's the point he's making in
Exactly.
in the blog entry.
And I take this point very much. If you can get as much of what you want in camera, in terms of lighting and even effects, it's better. There's stuff that is better done in post, obviously, but then if you can do it in camera, it's always better. And from a cinematographer's point of view,
sure.
Absolutely. I'm not going to go through the details, but yeah, have a look at that blog if you're a cinematographer, if you're really into that. RyanEWalters.com, yet another great blog post from him. Why film schools matter for the future of filmmaking. We're running a film school here. Do we matter?
Yes, of course we matter. Of course we matter.
When we get our film, this is coming from Film Industry Network website, where we get our film education is extremely important, and with so many courses out there, is film school still relevant? In my view, in the view of the writer here, Ian Alexander, it is, and here's why, and explains his details of why he thinks film schools are still relevant. Again, go and have a read of that article, filmindustrynetwork.biz. But why do you think we're still relevant? Would you agree with him?
I would absolutely agree that film schools are relevant. One of the earliest things that I learned when I started playing with musical instruments, and in 1985, I went and bought my MIDI keyboard, and then I bought another one, and I bought the sequencer, and I bought all of this stuff, and I put together a quite substantial MIDI kit. And then I discovered the most important lesson you can ever learn, which is no amount of junk takes the place of talent or training. And that's where film schools come in. Anybody can go out and attempt to shoot a movie these days with an iPhone, and lots of people do, and some people are successful because they manage to tell a story. But actually knowing what you're doing gives you that edge.
Well, we had this as a pick my brain
you know
question,
what
I
you're
remember from several episodes ago, yes. And yes, in principle, I agree. Obviously, we're teaching here at a film school. I think there's a great benefit to going out and just doing it, getting hands-on, making those mistakes, learning from those mistakes. But the advantage of a film school is you're going to, you can make the mistakes here and be told that it was a mistake, understand why it was a mistake, and no one has to see it.
Yes.
And you get through that process a lot quicker, I think.
And it's so much better to be learning this stuff in an educational environment than out in the wide world when you've got your first job and somebody's saying to you, that's it, you're off the set because you're really doing badly. You want to make the mistakes in a safe haven, and education gives that to you.
And of course, most of the top filmmakers of last generation, Spielberg and Lucas and Coppola and people like that, they all came up through film school. And the new generation, obviously, after that. We actually, I remember we had a graduation here just this week, and Lewis Fitzgerald, one of our fellow teachers here, did a wonderful keynote speech, and he talked about film education and how it began in Russia, began in 60s and 70s in America and here, and how important it is, film schools like this. Yeah, I think there is a place for film schools, even though cameras are cheap and small and easy, and anyone can go out and shoot something. So yeah, if you want to find out what this fellow says, Ian Alexander, filmindustrynetwork.biz, you'll find why film schools still matter for the future of filmmaking. SPA.
And a great initiative from the Screen Producers Association of Australia, and this is their initiative under the category of the ones to watch. So they're doing a program to boost the next generation of producers. Now, it's selective entry. You have to apply to SPA to get this. You need to have 3 to 5 years experience, and you need to have a project that's already in development ready to pitch. What you'll get out of this process, if you're successful, is, well, firstly, you get a whole heap of recognition with people where it actually counts. You get a whole heap of other things, including cheap entry to the SPA conference, which will be coming up in November. And don't underestimate the importance of being able to get out amongst the industry people who might want to talk to you and pick up your work. So this is a good thing. Apply now.
And this is part of SPA Fringe, which is happening. Is it in Sydney this year? I can't remember.
Look at the website.
Yeah, look at the website.
Look at the website. We don't need to tell anybody. Look at the website.
But the ones to watch that you mentioned, they're only taking 20 people for this initiative. So yeah, apply now. spafringe.org.au. Spa ones to watch. Have a look at that.
They're being a bit cheeky. There's a $25 entry fee, but look, you're going to get great feedback and you get great experience. And there is nothing like the experience of actually pitching. $25 is not a lot to go through that experience. It's pin
And I went to Spa Fringe last year. It's very good, very
good.
useful. Yeah. Afters, one of our rival schools just around the pond here.
They're not rivals.
Well, no, our colleagues
Yes.
at Afters.
Very collegiate here.
They offer 2 fellowship awards. And this year they've offered 2 $50,000 fellowships to Karel Firth and Damien Power. They'll each receive $50,000 to write and direct a short film. So they submitted, along with several other people, these pitches for a short film, and they won. So just congratulations to Karel Firth, Damien Power, and well done Afters for offering these kinds of fellowship awards for people to get out there, get a decent budget to go and make a short film.
Well, the great thing about that is it takes out of the equation for a short while the need to worry about where your food is coming from. You actually concentrate on doing the gig.
You can actually make a film and have proper catering and pay people what, at least award race and make something decent.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Great
well
idea.
done. Just wanted to let people know and congratulate the 2 fellows for that. Do you remember a couple of episodes we talked about Australian actors taking over all the roles in Hollywood? And there was a nice gaggy joke video about all that.
Yeah.
Well, it's very much based, in fact, they've just had pilot season in America, in the US. The stations have picked up a lot of shows and a lot of Australian actors are involved in these.
I think we tend to be punching above our weight here, really.
Yes, they've got, I'm not going to go through all of the shows that were picked up, but notably they've got 12 Australians and 1 Kiwi New Zealander have roles in new US series. Rachel Taylor in Crisis, Tony Collette, who's already done a series in the US, now in Hostages, Bob Morley for The 100, Miranda Otto and Bojana Novakovic.
Bojana Novakovic.
Novakovic, yes.
I hope I got that
in
right.
the US remake
of Rake.
of Rake.
Isn't that wonderful?
They're remaking an Australian series with Australian actors. Why don't they get the originals? I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah.
Miranda Otto's great. I don't know Bojana's work. Georgina Haig in Reckless, Adelaide Kane and...
So let me get this right, Phil. You're not going to go through all the names, but you're going through all the names.
No, I'm not going through all the series that they're going to make. Rebel Wilson, Super Funno, Luke Mitchell, Rebecca Breeds, Sophie Lowe in all of these up-and-coming series in the US. And also Carl Urban, New Zealander in Almost Human. So look, 13 people from the Antipodes here, all getting into these series in the US. Yes, we are taking over Hollywood.
We are, and we're also pitching pretty well at Cannes.
Cannes' big news lately. Yes, Cannes' been going on. The opening film was great. One of the opening films, Great Gatsby, which did not get a great reception, but there's more on that later. But yes, Cannes, Australian impact in Cannes. Was this meant to be mine or yours?
This is yours.
This is mine. Okay. There's a story here on Screen Hub from Tara Judah. Basically bemoaning the fact that Gatsby was the opening film, and it's not really, in her opinion, an Australian film, not, even though Baz Luhrmann was the director, and how they want to see true Australian films like The Sapphires was last year, about Australian culture, Australian character, because The Gatsby's not an Australian story after all. It's hard to call it an Australian film in that term.
Well, it was a film made in Australia. It's not an Australian
That's all.
story.
And it has some Australian cast, but it's not an Australian story. And she's saying, look, Canada would really like to see proper Australian films. We're not making enough of them. And people overseas want to see Australian films that actually represent our culture properly, rather than just something just happens to be made here.
But hang on, I'm going to go back to this. What does that matter?
Well,
who cares? We're producing films in this country that are things for people to watch. We're employing local actors. We're employing local technicians. We're employing...
But are we making enough films to be able to do Australian cultural specific films and other things as well?
I think it would be a very boring world if all we ever did was make local films about local topics.
True, but her argument is Gatsby's the big thing this year. There is nothing else. There's a couple of shorts, but there's no features in Cannes representing Australia properly.
All right, so what are you going to do? You're going to get a pair of shorts for next year?
Well, we should have more Australian features getting there. No.
Okay, so there you go. You've heard it here, folks. Next year we're going to feature a pair of Phil's shorts.
A pair of my shorts will be featured at Cannes.
At
I actually
Cannes.
did have a film. It was not in the Cannes Festival, but it's in the market. Right. There are a lot of films in the Cannes market because Cannes is a double festival. It's both an awards festival and a market festival.
So now we know that you're going to take off your shorts in the can.
No, I'll take them off in the can market.
Yes, thank you, Phil.
Because I don't intend to win an award for my shorts.
Do you know how hard it
But
is
I'll
to
sell them.
Do you know how hard it is to set up those gags? Chop, 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 chop.
Chop, chop, chop. Anyway, she's bemoaning the fact that we don't have enough proper Australian content over there. Star Trek. Let's talk Star Trek. Was this me or you? I'll do it.
Oh, this is the one about Mary Jo Markey and Mary Ann Brandon.
Yes.
It's a great article here on this website. The name, and I don't have the name of the website. Which
Website is, I got this from Studio Daily.
From Studio, okay.
Yeah.
So if you go and search on Mary Jo Markey and Mary Ann Brandon, and they have quite a good conversation. It's an interesting expose on the theme of cutting the film Star Trek Into Darkness for J.J. Abrams and the skill that they bring to the process of cutting and how they go about cutting it. And there's some really interesting
And
insights
they also
there.
talk about the cameras they shot on. They were on the Alexa. They shot.
Well,
some of it
they
in
were using
IMAX.
that for some of the plates.
Yeah, and the Red Epic they had to shoot some pickup shots on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and they cut the whole thing on Media Composer with different versions. So they're talking about some of the technicalities and the gear they used.
Yeah,
which is really good.
If you're just sort of like interested in the process of editing and workflow, and particularly if you know nothing about it, like you're watching this and you go, "What?" Read this article. It's good insight.
And it's also interesting that Star Trek Into Darkness is a 3D film, and it's done 3D in post, so it wasn't shot 3D. And she's saying here that it was pretty straightforward for them to do 3D in post. They didn't find it complicated. They paid attention to the fact that it was going to be in 3D, of course, and they shot it that way, knowing it was going to happen. So, for them, they say it worked. This article comes from Beth Merchant on StudioDaily.com. On that, also, you found a piece on the sound design for Star Trek
Did I?
from Ben Burt.
I did.
You did.
I
Well,
did.
It was in there. I didn't put it in the lineup.
You didn't put it in it. Oh, that was no. That was. I have no idea where we're going with this.
No, it's just another interesting little piece. Ben Burt, one of the premier sound designers in the world, worked on this most recent Star Trek. And there's a nice little 2-minute piece here on the sound design that he did for Star Trek and the phasers and the warp sound again.
Star Trek Into Darkness brings beloved characters from the original 1960s TV series back to the silver screen. But what really brings this movie to life are the sound effects, as created by sound designer Ben Burt.
So he started way back in the first Star Wars film, and recently a lot of the Pixar films like WALL-E. Have a look at that. It's not very long. Have a look at that. That's on YouTube. Look for CNET News. From Phasers to Warp, the sound design of Star Trek with Ben Burt. Just an interesting
All
little
of
piece.
these things will need sounds to be created after the
There's
fact,
Ben.
after the film's been shot.
Burt says the average feature-length film has 400 to 500 different sound effects. This new Star Trek movie, over 1,500.
I spent a tremendous amount of time doing weapons in this film. J.J. Abrams was particularly demanding in terms of wanting these weapons to be distinct and different. Here's like a dog mixed with a rocket.
Some of the sounds Burt uses are collected in the field. Bubbling lava was really dry ice tossed into a stream.
I have activated the device, Captain.
So he's one of the
Sounds
masters
aboard
of
the Enterprise
finding these
came from
alternate
the
sounds
old
that actually sound
fashioned
really
I
realistic
got some
and good
styrofoam,
Yeah.
cut
in
it
the
up
film.
and-
I've got another video here, which relates to. Remember, we've had a discussion over the last several episodes about. Remember, way back with Rhythm and Hughes and the problems in the visual effects industry in America, and lots of businesses either going bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy. It's a big issue around the world, and especially in the US, for these companies. There was a really good speech here by the State of the Visual Effects Industry and Where Do We Go From Here by Scott Ross and Scott Squires, two leaders in visual effects and post in the US. Worked at ILM and lots of places. They did a 40-minute talk here, which is on moviemachine.tv. Let's run just where we've got it queued up there, if you could, for a moment.
Still want to get into the visual effects business. And I don't frankly understand it, having been there, done that twice with Industrial Light and Magic and Digital Domain, but people continue to do it, and while they continue to do it, people continue to go bankrupt. In fact, the number of companies that have gone out of business or have been bankrupted over the last 10 years is astounding and outweighs clearly the companies that have stayed in business.
and I'm not even sure this is all the companies. This was one of the latest lists that we got. But
There's an interesting visual effect, isn't it?
Business.
So all the companies that are going out of
there's a lot of
business,
competition going
and
on.
they detail, it's
we've
a
got
really
list
good
of
talk, they detail the
problems.
problems in the
You already
industry.
know some of these.
They go through the finances, how films are financed, and how again, we've had this discussion, how the post people are really funding these films in sweat labour, and what can they do to change, because they're all going out of business, and Rhythm and Hughes made Life of Pi, won an Oscar, out of business, they can't afford to keep going. So they're offering real solutions. It's a really important talk if you're in the post-production community, visual effects. Have a look at that. It's a good talk, and that's from that's on Vimeo at the moment. Just look for State of the VFX Industry on Vimeo.
From Abel Cine, an interesting discussion on the costs of 4K, and there's a wonderful post by Juliet McNally where she talks through the actual, not just the obvious costs, but some of the hidden costs of posting in 4K, with an article talking about from 4K from acquisition to archiving. Particularly important when you consider that if you're going to run at full res, flat chat, 4444 4K, an hour of 4K at that is going to be half a gigabyte per hour. Half a gigabyte per hour. Now, you might say, okay, I can put half a
terabyte.
Half a terabyte, sorry. Half a terabyte per hour. Now, you might say, well, I could put half a terabyte on a half a terabyte disk. Chances are that half a terabyte doesn't fit on a half terabyte disk because of overheads and other crap in the disk structure. So,
and everything else,
so you get to the end and discover suddenly that you've just sort of run out of room. So useful trips like a half terabyte card isn't quite enough. Worth the read for the article, the cost of 4K.
It really breaks down the numbers here. I like the fact that, as you say, 4444 ProRes, which is still compressed but a good image, at HD gives you 120 gig, and as you say, at 4K...
So you put 4 hours in half a terabyte.
It's 509 gig, so quite a lot. And he works out the numbers, he breaks it down. When you're shooting, apart from having extra cards, cost-wise, it probably balances out.
Yeah.
But when it comes to downloading that footage, working out the dailies, archiving all that extra data, it ends up costing you about an extra $15,000. $50,000 per session of 4K.
Yeah. And there's only so many times you can run down to Officeworks and buy another disk drive.
Per day, yeah. Yes. So it's just making a highlight of the amount of data here. People love to shoot in 4K, uncompressed RAW ideally, but it's a lot of data to work with. How do we store it? How do we archive it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's difficult to do, especially on a smaller budget. Everyone goes out there and hires a Red or something, but they don't think about how to deal with the data.
They don't. We've got some exciting news from New Zealand where they're still going down the road of deciding whether software is patentable. In fact, they've pretty much decided that software is not patentable. There is an interesting test that came out of the UK. It's called the Errortel test, and it says, well, if the only thing that has changed is the software, it's not patentable, but if the software has changed as a result of some innovation in the hardware, then maybe it is patentable. New Zealand, of course, we know from Fisher and Paykel, have managed to innovate with a whole lot of software-powered hardware devices like a washing machine. Now, we're not suggesting that you're going to go out and shoot your next 4K movie with a Fisher and Paykel dryer, although it might produce better results than using an iPhone. You just never know. But the question of whether or not software is patentable is really important.
Well,
why would you
what
spend
they
all your
say
time
here.
developing something if it turns out that somebody else can just steal it straight away?
Software is simply not an invention in the first place. That is what the government's declaring. So we don't have to patent it because it's not an invention. But as you say, if it's associated with a piece of hardware, then it's patentable.
It is patentable.
So as long as you build a dongle.
However, that doesn't mean that you can't license a piece of software. This doesn't give everybody the right to go and steal your software, but it does change the way maybe that you interact with the world if you've come up with a really good new idea.
So they acknowledge you can still copyright software. It's code after all.
It just can't be patented. So what it means is patent prevents somebody else from going and stealing your idea, whereas the copyright just prevents them from stealing your actual piece of work.
Yeah, because there's been some ridiculous patent lawsuits over software. like Apple's swipe to
Well,
open
yeah,
things like,
and the
you
thing
know.
with Samsung and everything else, you know, and,
Yeah.
and Microsoft and IBM going head to head, you know.
And I wonder actually if this will extend to patenting DNA and things like that, which people have been doing. Organics.
Wow.
You know, I'd rather they couldn't patent one's DNA.
Phil, I don't think you've got anything to worry about.
No one wants my DNA.
I don't think anybody is going to want your DNA. You can patent it as much as you like. I am personally not going to go and steal Phil's DNA under any circumstances, ever. Again.
I'm going back to Cannes. Meanwhile at Cannes, Lionsgate have raked in $250 million. They've been doing quite well. So the dim, dark days of trying to get a film in a festival and trying to get it sold, and there was a few years ago, it was like almost impossible to sell a film. It's now picking up where companies are selling films, making decent money. People are buying again. People are buying films. And Lionsgate, they have got the new Hunger Games. You can see the picture there. There's a sequel to Hunger Games coming up. The Last Witch Hunter, a little cast, I won't go through the titles, but if Lionsgate is a representative of what's going on, it looks like the business in terms of filming and sales and market is picking up at least at markets like Cannes. That's all I wanted to say about that. Although there is more Cannes news here, again on finances, there's two-part story here. On that, most of the films that are doing really well are the really big tentpole films. And it says Iron Man, Batman, Superman. If you've got a man in the title, you're pretty good, I think.
So there's no man in the title of Great Gatsby?
No.
Is that the problem?
Great Gatsby Man, it should have been called.
Great
It'll do
Gatsby
even
Man.
better.
That would have done it.
But there's these two stories here. Again, this is coming from Screen Hub, from Andrew Einspruch. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Andrew.
Andrew Einspruch.
Andrew Einspruch. About investors go, there's three tiers of investment basically. $1 million, low budget, $10 to $20 million, middle budget, or you're going to $100 to $250 million, the big budget films. Which ones do you think are most likely to get investment?
I would have thought that the ones that are most likely to get the investment are actually the big ones. You know, if you want to do something, go big.
Yes, and all investors say, even though it might be a couple of $100 million, they're more likely to get the audience, and there's $100 million on, this is what Soderbergh was talking about a couple of weeks ago. You'll get $100 million on Princeton marketing, Princeton advertising, but they will make their money back. A $1 million film, it's small. If you get enough of it out there, you can still make a profit. Those mid-range films, though, they can't make a profit.
Yeah.
No one will invest in them because they don't go big enough.
So I wonder how Zach Braff is going with the movie that he was trying to make.
Well, that may be the solution. If you're trying to make that
Like the
mid-range
crowdsource
film,
thing.
yeah, you crowdsource it, get the 5, 10, 20 million, because no one else will give you the money unless they're a shopping owner or someone who's just got a few $1 million to spare. Major film investors won't go for it.
It's got to be a better bet than Lotto, though. If you go and crowdsource a film, you might not get your money back. You buy a Lotto ticket, you probably won't get your money back.
If you knew someone who dropped 10 million on Lotto, say give it to me instead. But that mid-range, we're talking America, so that mid-range American $10 million film, that's like a big budget film Australian terms.
Yeah.
If we're talking anything over 4 million, it's big budget Australian.
Actually, there's 4 levels of production. So there's the the 1 mil, there's the 10 to 20 mil, there's a couple of $100 million, and then there's what we do here, which is a bottle of Coke.
The no budget film.
The no budget film.
Yeah, anything under $1 million.
But look, here's the interesting thing. So the number of films that have actually now gone to over $1 billion. So it's actually much easier to make $1 billion film now than it used to be.
Films, though, yeah.
So if you go back to '97, when Titanic was the first film to become $1 billion film, it was like another 2 years later before Star Trek.
You're speaking of $1 billion box office.
$1 billion box office.
Yeah.
So Star Trek Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, became the next $1 billion film. And I've got to say, I reckon George Lucas could have done it much earlier, except for that stupid intercision of Jar Jar Binks, which just held everything back. Jar Jar Binks, I think, set cinematography back probably at least 200 years.
Cinematography or storytelling?
Well, storytelling, everything. The thing is that it sounds like films are actually making more money. The truth is that ticket prices are up, and that's partly what's driving the measurement of the increased value at the box office, and that's partly come out of the number of films that are attracting premium prices because of 3D charging. So
it's not actually more people going to the cinema?
Not necessarily. And then, of course, $1 billion doesn't mean that the filmmakers are getting more money, because 45% of that is going to the exhibitors straight away, And to be fair, the exhibitors have just had to completely re-equip for digital, so they've got money that they've got to put back into their business model.
I like the comparison they've got here, but by today's ticket prices, 1939's Gone with the Wind actually managed to outgross them all with a staggering 3.3 billion. So if you give it a level playing field, that's what things used to be back in those days.
Yeah, that might be true, but
in today's dollars.
But Phil, that's history, and frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Well, you should give a damn because, 3.3 billion is nothing compared to Avatar making 1 billion. It's still 3 times as successful as Avatar was. We don't make them like we used to. People don't go to the movies like they used to back in those days because of TV and everything else, I guess. Those inflated ticket prices are misleading. The other ones they give here is $200 million films. You talk about big tent poles. Battleship, $209 million budget. John Carter, $250 million, and they died. They gave Disney a $200 million deficit. Thank God they've got the Marvel franchise.
You just keep working on this stuff, and you hope your wins cover your losses.
Every now and then,
hope you
those
don't have
really
too many
big
losses.
films don't work, and it becomes a big black hole you've got to try and recover from. So they don't always work. Invest in a few more $1 million films, folks, or $20 million films, and give us low-budget filmmakers a chance.
And then, by the way, send the rest of the money to us. We'll tell you where to write the cheque.
Film festivals and things that are calling for entries. A few little quick ones here. WASA, which is the Film and Television Institute at the Western Australian Screen Awards. They're open for entries for the Young Filmmaker of the Year. To be eligible, you must be 25 years or under as of the 31st of March, and you must have turned 25 during the WASA eligibility period, which is up to the between January last year or 2 years ago and 31st of March. Entries close 5 o'clock Wednesday, 5th of June. So if you are under 25 and you want to, be notified as the Young Filmmaker of the Year, you've got an entry for that. Have a look at the WASA website. I'm looking at Screen Hub here, thanks to the guys at Screen Hub. From the Film TV Institute, FTI, Western Australian Screen Awards. Also, in upcoming entries, there's professional development applications are open from Silver Screen in Tasmania. A successful professional development initiative, Silver Screen is back, and the applications are now open to Tasmanian directors, writers and producers who have some credits and committed to advancing their career in the screen industry. So they're looking for a maximum of 3 people. There's 3 places available, offered each year, and the selection process is highly competitive, they say. The director will get a 12-month membership of the ADG, the Directors Guild, and attend their national conference. The producer will get a 12-month membership to SPA and go to their national conference, and the writer will get 12-month membership to the Writers Guild. To apply, contact Screen Tasmania's Industry Development Officer or their website, which is screen.tas.gov.au. Do you have any other entries?
Well, we've got the Foxtel piece.
Crowd,
So this is in conjunction with Green Awareness Week, which runs from the 1st to the 7th of June, and Foxtel is giving creatives a shot at $5,000 of cash. There you go, to help produce. This is part of the Green IT initiative. You can read about it on their site, or it's under the banner of Brand Honey. Brand, Honee, and the website for that is brandhon.ee. You can go there and
brandhon.ee. What is .ee?
I have no idea.
Okay, yeah, check that out. They look
Interesting top-level domain.
$5,000 cash. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But I mean, it's great to see Foxtel supporting this, and one of the things I just really does impress everybody in the industry. Is the extent to which Foxtel supports so many of these initiatives. Big shout out to Robin Elliott. Hi, Robin. And big shout out to all the people who run the channels at Foxtel. But there are so many things, so many initiatives that Foxtel actually does to stimulate the industry. And it's not just about getting the money from your set-top box.
Well, they also ran a workshop recently for...
Actually, it is just about getting the money from your set-top box, but they do a lot of other stuff as well.
As I say, they ran a workshop for some homeless kids, which we had that visit our college here because they were graduating. And apparently they've done a great job. They've learned the basics of filmmaking. They've each made a short film and everything else. So another of their initiatives, really well done.
No, there's a very large number of these initiatives come out of the Foxtel stable. It's
Wide angle. Raw Nerve Short Film Production Initiative. Wide Angle's calling for entry-level directors with a great short film script, 5 to 7 minutes, that explores the themes best date, worst date.
I love that. Best date, worst date. What
Yeah.
was your best date?
Well,
What was your worst date, Phil?
all of them. It's been so long since I've been on a date.
My worst date was the 3rd of March.
Really?
Yes.
I don't have a date like that. It's my worst date. It must be the 13th of something. Raw Nerve are looking for a short film, 5 to 7 minutes, that fits that thing, and they're producing the film with a package valued at $20,000. Films will be broadcast on ABC2. If you're interested, go to wideangle.org.au/rawnerve.
You got to wonder, is like ABC2, is that like second prize?
No, ABC2 does some good stuff. They're not second prize, it's just their second channel.
It's just the second channel.
It's just the second
Okay.
channel. More stuff on ABC.
Excellent. Okay, from the site thestar.com comes a very interesting discussion on 10 filmmaking lessons learned from The Room. Now, I have to show my stripes here. I have not yet seen The Room.
I tried to sit through it, I couldn't.
Based on this site, I don't want to see The Room. This is now widely being regarded as the worst film of all time, a banner that it would have to take from, Plan 9 from Outer Space, which up to now has been regarded...
That famously has usually been regarded the worst film ever made, yeah.
Yeah, except Plan 9 from Outer Space is sort of so bad that it's good, you know, along with...
Well, that's what people say about The Room. The acting is so bad in the bits that I've seen, and it's just an indulgent ego trip.
Is
But there are
this
people that love it.
is this another Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, or has this got absolutely no redeeming qualities whatsoever?
I must admit, I haven't seen the whole film. But this article, yes, written by Garnet Fraser, he actually looks at it as a great educational experience. And
Yeah.
the lessons you can learn from this
Yes.
film.
Lesson number 1.
Go ahead.
Cast yourself in the lead.
Absolutely. Don't sweat the rest of the casting either. Just get anyone. Speak from the heart. I like the last lesson, lesson number 10. Accept that it will probably be terrible and do it anyway. Because whether you see The Room or not, this film has done you a big favour. No one will ever call your creation the worst movie ever. That title's taken.
Yeah. I started reading the article and I thought, this is serious. Phil sends me the URLs and says, here's the story we're going to be talking about this week. So I started reading that, and it was like until I got to point number 3 that I started to realise, no, this guy is putting the knife in and twisting really hard.
Another famous contender for worst film ever made was Birdemic. You ever heard of that? No. Oh, it starts out not bad actually, but then they had these visual effects of like Hitchcock-style birds attacking people, and the visual effects are so awful.
There's
bad.
so many films with the early science fiction films where this flying saucer goes and you can see the piece of string.
If anyone out there has another contender for worst film ever made that we haven't mentioned, send us a link and we'll see if we can find.
Drop us a line
Drop us
to
a line.
A Girl and a Gun.
A Girl and a Gun. Send it to Veronica. Send it to Veronica at
agirlandagun.tv.
Your pitch for the worst film ever made.
Yeah.
If you've got a better idea.
And if you want to know about the worst film ever made, go and get Plan 9 from Outer Space. Then watch the film Ed Wood, which is the sort of a biopic really about.
It's a Tim Burton great biopic. In fact, I've used Plan 9 in my classes as an example of what not to do. It's a very fun film actually.
Oh, it is. It's a great film. It's great. I mean, it's a cult classic.
But I show this and say, how could you look what they've done? What have they done wrong here? How would you have done this better? Do you think?
What they did wrong was they had a star who died just after the movie started being produced. They got all this footage in the can, and they have to go and finish it.
The best thing about it was Bela Lugosi for the brief scenes he was in.
Yeah.
As sickly as he was at the time.
Anyway, there you go.
I've got a video here just to finish up with. Let's play a bit of this video from Casey Luck. That's What I Like. So John, have you ever seen this still images that have a little bit of animation in them, like animated GIF kind of thing.
It's a very interesting stylistic thing where just a very small part of the image is animating and everything else.
This is one of the new things
still,
that you can do on mobile phones, where you've got these still images that has a little bit animated. And they've used that technique for this entire video clip, basically. Gives it a really interesting character, doesn't it?
And it also means it will run at very low resolution on a mobile phone.
Yes. We shouldn't be playing that full screen. We might get pulled down, so let's stop that one there. I don't want to get another takedown from YouTube.
No, we don't.
Anyway, that's the end of our news for this week. I just wanted to end with a video for this week.
Hey, Charger.
Hey, Charger.
Hey, Charger.
Okay, let's jump into our tutorial for this week, number 3, episode 3 in our series with Karel Segers on screenwriting. Hello and welcome to this, our third in our series on screenwriting with Karel Segers. Hello, Karel.
Hi, Phil.
We've talked about software, we've talked about ideas. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How do you start writing a screenplay? What's the most important thing in starting to write a screenplay?
Well, different people have different theories, but over the years I've come back to one thing, and ultimately it's the one thing that's been going for 3,000 years. Your character must have a goal and must act to achieve that goal. So goals are everywhere. If your character doesn't have a goal, if the audience or the reader doesn't understand what the goal is, you are in real trouble. And that goal will define the structure of your story. It will define how the audience perceives the character. Because if we talk about characters, right, we're actually talking about what we see from those characters, what those characters do. And they usually act because they want to achieve something. Right? So the goal is at the center of everything. And there are some American screenwriting teachers who say, your character doesn't need a goal until the end of Act 1. Well, I invite you to watch the opening of Back to the Future, just the first 5 minutes, and tell me, does Marty have goals or not? No, he doesn't have a goal. He has about 5 goals in those first 5 minutes. So your character needs goals all the time. We have goals. If we don't have goals, what do? We jump under the train, jump off the harbour bridge.
It's got to have a reason to live.
Absolutely. So we always want to achieve something. And everything we do for a reason, because we have a goal, right? Every minute of every day, we have hundreds of goals. And in a story, the same thing. You need one overarching goal, a goal that runs throughout the story, and we'll say that is what the movie is about. It's about this sheriff trying to stop the shark, right? But then you look at the smaller sections of your story, the acts and the sequences and the scenes. Even there, your characters are trying to achieve something.
So we've got your main character has one overarching goal. Jaws, got to get the shark.
Yeah.
But within the scene, there's individual mini goals. Is this true of every character?
It is. Otherwise, you cut the character out. If the character doesn't have a goal, why is it in the story? The goal can be to sabotage another character, right? But it's, there's got to be a reason behind it. If we don't see the reason, then that character is unmotivated, we get confused. And the one thing you don't want is a confused audience. It's better to be bored for a short while, I would say. Confused is not good. Now, what's your goal? Because you have a goal right here, right now.
My goal
we both have a goal. What's your goal?
My goal is to get the best interview in a few minutes that I can.
Exactly.
For the subject.
And it's my goal to just sound smart. I just say stuff.
Well, so far it's working for you.
Oh, well, there you go.
Your villain in the story also has a goal,
Yeah.
usually in opposition to your hero. On a really big epic film, let's say like the Star Wars trilogy or Lord of the Rings things, where the goal can change from film to film or from act to act.
Yeah.
We'll get into acts a bit later.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a hero whose goal needs to change in the course of a story?
Well, there's one point in the story where I'd like to see at least a subtle, sometimes a fundamental change, and that's the midpoint. Still, it is unified by the bigger picture, because you can say Chief Brody in Jaws, he only starts trying to kill the shark from the midpoint, because before that he's got other strategies. But he's still...
His goal is to keep the town at peace, to keep it open for business.
To protect the people.
Yeah.
So the business side, that's his antagonist's goal. That is the mayor's goal. So those goals are in direct opposition in the first half of the movie, because Chief Brody wants to close the beaches and keep the people safe.
You're right, I forgot,
And
yes.
the mayor wants to keep business open, so he doesn't want to turn people away.
So his solution is close the beaches,
Yeah.
and if no one goes near the shark, then we're good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that changes halfway through.
Exactly, and then, but he realizes that it's not going to work because there is a solution that will make everybody happy. It's kill the shark. All right. So there is a consistency. There is an overarching goal throughout the story, but there's a fundamental change in approach, and that's at the midpoint.
Well, that's basically the same goal, though. It's just upping the ante.
Yeah.
So that solution's no good. I'm going to have to go for a more intense solution.
But what changes at the midpoint is in direct relation to the theme of the movie and the character change. How Chief Brody needs to change, because he hasn't taken responsibility in the first half of the film. There are other scenes that show that. So,
in fact, the one with the sun in particular
absolutely
is a beautiful
Yeah.
scene in that film, which most people forget about.
Absolutely, yeah. So goals change, but there's got to be goals. Major goals, minor goals, goals all the time. It's the number one important thing in screenwriting.
Give your hero a goal, something to strive for, and whether they win or succeed depends what kind of movie you're making.
I think there's these 22 rules of Pixar, the 22 rules of storytelling that Pixar uses. One of them is, they say, the audience will not so much love your character, obviously they say it more eloquently, for what they achieve, but they will love your character for how hard they try.
Right. It's the journey, not the goal. But you've got to have a goal to aim for. Thank you very much, Karel.
Pleasure.
So see you next time on the next episode in our series on screenwriting with Karel Segers. There we go. How's that? We actually have a piece lined up which one of our students put together. David here, one of our students, he makes his own grips gear, dollies, jibs, all that kind of stuff. And they went and filmed him at home, how he builds it and how he makes it and how all that kind of thing. So we've got a little package here for that now. Let's run that, thanks.
Hi, I'm David. I like to build my own gear. It is a great way to learn the mechanics of the different types of gear used in the film industry. I guess I can call myself an engineer. I built all my gear in my garage, turned workshop. I built my own Jeep, as you can see, and my own round dolly trucks. I use when I am out filming. This is a lot hard work, but fun at the same time, and I get to save a lot of money. I believe anything it is possible if you try your best and believe that it is possible.
There we go. Yeah, he makes all his own stuff there, his own gear, all handmade. It looks really good, actually. You see that jib shot at the end there, really nice and smooth.
That's a great thing. You know, it's like you go, has everything been invented? Is it impossible to do something new? Well, it's always possible to go and do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to actually make your own dolly and things like this. And as we saw with those gimbals, don't spend $15,000 on a movie. People are out there making their own versions. As soon as they see it, I'll make a copy of that. I'll make a version of that.
Yeah, I just wonder how much it would actually cost to
There
make
you are, David.
one of
There's
those
a challenge
things.
for you,
Oh,
David.
you like go out and do the electronics
Make
thing.
one of those gimbal handheld things. See if you can do that one.
Can we make something to
challenge.
stabilise Phil's chair?
My chair? You don't like my chair?
It's moving around a bit.
Oh. Something else I wanted to briefly mention. In the last story, we talked about the animated GIF kind of thing. The guy that invented GIFs, images, has finally come down and said how that's meant to be pronounced.
And it's meant to be pronounced?
GIF.
GIF.
I disagree with him.
How
I think
can
it should be
how can you
GIF.
disagree? Well, how can you disagree with the guy who invented it?
Because
if he invents it and he calls it GIF.
Because the G stands for graphic interchange format. It's a hard G, GIF.
Yeah, graphic interface format.
Anyway, he says it should be GIF. I still disagree. He's wrong. It should be GIF.
I don't know.
I'm still going to call them GIFs anyway.
Are you?
Yes.
I'm sure the entire world is going to revolve around that decision, Phil.
Most people in the world have used GIF, I think. And anyone who says GIF is wrong, basically.
So if you know what on earth this thing should be pronounced as, why don't you just send a tweet to an address that we don't have, or to this one that you see on the screen right now. A Girl and a Gun, Veronica at a Girl and a Gun.
How do you pronounce it? GIF or GIF?
I
And
don't
spell
know.
it GIF correctly.
Or at a Girl and a Gun, because we're watching that sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
GIF or JPEG?
Oh, who cares?
So it's gay peg.
Gay peg?
What? If it's a GIF, it's a gay peg.
Yeah, Phil and I are going to have this discussion afterwards, I'm sure.
I think it's, come back to me, I think it's time to pick my brain.
Pick your brain.
Pick my brain. We got a couple of video Pick My Brains this week, so let's run the first of those.
This is a question everyone wants to know. How do they get the hoverboards to hover in Back to the Future 2?
How do they get the hoverboards to hover in Back to the Future 2?
I don't know.
Well, there's a couple of tricks. Actually,
Was that the one with the rods and the blue screen?
That is one way of doing it, and that is definitely how they did like the
They did that in
flying
Star
car in
Wars.
Star Wars,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
They did that way. There were various tricks they used, and I actually found a video that represents this pretty well. Have you got that lined up? Because there's some behind the scenes that shows us how they did it, in fact. Just run a little bit of that video.
He's on a hoverboard!
Sorry about the bad compression, but that's what I found useful. Right, so they're showing us the opening scene here, the scene where they're using the hoverboards. Just jump forward a bit and it'll show us how they did this. There's a couple of different techniques. I'm really sorry about the compression. It looks awful, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but it's on YouTube. It's better than not having
Don't make it full screen, just run it like that. So here you've got the director and Michael J. Fox, so they're going through it. There's some basic editing tricks where they throw these boards without wheels off screen, so these guys, and Michael J. Fox is actually on, because they're not showing his feet at that point, he's actually on a roller, a skateboard. There's another shot coming up here where the three guys who are pursuing him, they're actually suspended on a crane on wires, so the boards are secured to their feet and they're just being dragged around on wires. Again, there, he pretends as if it's going to be hovered, but it doesn't. Now, nowadays, you could add a lot of this. They're on wires in that shot, you see?
Okay.
They're just being thrown around by a crane. And the same with Michael J. Fox when he was there. Some of it might be a bit of CGI to have them floating. Some of it might be just practical effects like, they're on a rod. Some of it's just clever camera angles and tricks where you don't see beneath the board.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of CGI maybe just to take out the wheels in those sort of cases. There's a few tricks you can do for that kind of thing. And there you see, that would have been a CGI board, I would guess. And here they throw it in real on the set, and then a CGI board takes over as it zooms into camera. So there you are. That's how they did the hoverboards in Back to the Future. Camera tricks, a little bit of CGI, cranes and dollies, whatever gets the shot looking right, basically.
There it goes.
Nowadays, we talked about practical effects before in camera. That was a lot more practical in camera effects. Nowadays, they probably tend to go more CGI, I think.
Because it's more controllable, but it'd take forever.
Yeah. If you could afford the crane, do the crane. It'll all work nicely. We have another Pick My Brain question, so let's have a look at that one.
Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm just about to go overseas to India and I was hoping to shoot a little documentary there. I just wanted to know what's the best small handheld camera I should invest in that'll also have good enough quality to be projected on big screens. Thanks, Phil.
So she's going to shoot a doco and wants to...
The best small handheld camera that will still allow the image to be really good.
Good enough for a cinema screening.
For a cinema screen?
Well, on a big screen, she says there, yes. I presume,
well, the question is how big? I mean, how big?
Well, 2K. That's all you need, really.
Well, 2K, I mean, essentially, an iPhone will do 2K quite effectively.
And the question comes down to, I don't know what kind of doco she's planning on making, but yes, most people, when they go out there, you don't want to be taking a whole crew, a whole big kit. You want a small camera that's inconspicuous and easy and rugged and can handle temperature
like a 5D.
differences. Well, maybe not like a 5D,
No, it's not
to be
actually,
honest.
no. GoPro actually works quite well. The challenge is you've got no control over it.
GoPro would be great if you're doing some stunty type work, some difficult angles. That'd be one to take along, absolutely, but not as your main camera. I actually would recommend one of the camcorders that are out there now. And we looked at a website. I've got a website that compares quite a few of these camcorders. If you can bring up that website,
Sony
there's
makes
a few out
some,
there.
some absolutely
Sony,
fabulous
Panasonic,
little,
even Canon
little camcorders.
There's some great camcorders. I'd recommend. These are all HD nowadays, anyway.
Yeah.
You want one that's got a good lens. Internally, they're all H.264. They're all MPEG-4, so it really doesn't make much difference. A good lens. Possibly an internal hard drive if you're going to be gone on shoot for a long time, because you want lots of memory in the camera.
Yeah, actually, the third one along there, the Sony HDR PJ, I've used one of those. It's a really cute camera. It does really good work, and it has the added feature of having a projector built into it. So you shoot stuff, and then off the back of the viewfinder, you just project onto a wall or something. You can. Maybe you only get an image, say, that big, but it's enough to be able to watch the watch the
so
rushes.
even on location, you can preview what you've done.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's really
There's some cameras
effective.
that do that. I'd recommend, look, any number of those cameras, if they're good. If you're talking about $800 to $1,000, it's a pretty good camera. Above 500, say.
Yeah.
Anything below about 500. Well, yes, that is actually an option. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera these days would be an option.
Very tiny, and
Hadn't
of
thought
course
that.
you can put fabulous prime lenses on it.
That's comparable to the original Blackmagic. It's 2K. You still need to buy the lens for that, I think, or does that come with it? I can't remember.
You put lenses on it.
Yeah, so get a good lens. That's a slightly bigger option, but still quite small and quite usable. You'll have to get memory cards for that, though.
It's not much bigger than an iPhone. The thing that it gives you is a huge amount of control. And anybody who has found the app that allows you to do decent control on an iPhone, drop us a line, Veronica at agirlandagun.tv, because we'd like to know your favourite iPhone app, trust me.
For cinematography.
For
that kind of
cinematography,
thing.
yeah.
There's a few good ones out there.
I keep not finding them.
My basic tip, to finish this off, my basic tips for that kind of camera is have plenty of memory to store with, whether it's SD cards or an internal hard drive. Buy an extra battery for the thing, because they always come with too small a battery.
Yeah.
Get a nice big battery so it'll last you forever. And make sure it's got a nice big lens on the front. It's not going to compare to a professional lens, but if it's got a decent lens on the front, you'll get a better resolution out of it. And bear in mind, they're always going to be compressed. It's a heavily compressed image. But if you're talking the range 500 to 1,000 or above, it should be a pretty good camera.
Heavily compressed doesn't mean bad quality. It just means that it's
it means it's going to be
size.
difficult to grade, but it might be difficult in low light.
But easy to degrade.
But any camera like that will get. I've used cameras like that for my films, and they've projected very nicely, and that's HD resolution on a cinema screen. But as you say, the Blackmagic or maybe even a DSLR depends on the situation.
Yeah, remember the word unobtrusive.
Unobtrusive. As we said in our tutorial with
5D is not unobtrusive.
Paul, well, no. In the tutorial with Paul Howard, when we went to New York, we took the 7D instead of our big camera because it was unobtrusive and it's all handheld. So if you're going with a camera about this big, that's all right. If you've got a GoPro, it's even smaller. That's better.
Yeah, I'm looking at you very suspiciously here, Phil.
Why?
Because the word unobtrusive and 5D are not in...
Well, compared to a big camera like this with a tripod and the sound and the whole deal...
Sure. But I think we're talking about the sort of thing that you might not notice if you were on the set of Big Brother. And a 5D, you'd notice.
Okay, well, for documentary filmmaking, anything around that size. The other thing I would say, though, aside from the camera, get yourself a good audio recorder like the Zoom H4n and a good microphone, whether it's separate or it's actually on the camera. Get a spare microphone for sound. Yeah. That's it. That's how I picked my brains for today. That's the end of the show for today.
Well,
We're going
to look, the little technical tip here. So if you're using, as we do, a TriCaster to do your production, a very cute thing that you can get here. So I'll just show you here on the iPad. So I've downloaded this.
You've just lost
it. And of course, as soon as you try and do this, you touch the surface of the pad and something else happens. So it's this thing here called TCXD Audio. And I'll just bring this up, and there we go. So it starts up like this. So this looks a little bit like the TriCaster audio controls. And what it lets you do is control the TriCaster audio while somebody else is actually running the video. So it's very easy to use. Basically, you come here and you say, right, I want to talk to that TriCaster that's just found on the network, and you swing over here. and then you've got the display. So you can see that's reacting to my audio. And you can reach out here and control. So I could, in fact, if I wanted to, fade my audio down. So I'll just prove that I can do that from and back again. There you go.
So do you mean you had the power to turn me off at any point?
I had the power to turn absolutely everybody off. It's actually a really quite good tool, if for no other reason that while you're doing the audio mix, actually I'll just push the audio back up a bit, while you're doing the audio mix, somebody else can be using the TriCaster screen, and this allows you to see the audio levels without getting in the way.
Yes, because on the TriCaster, the audio mixer is on tabs along with other
Yeah,
stuff.
it sort of vanishes as soon as you go to video switching.
Yeah.
So, like, and there you go. It's one of those freebie downloads.
Oh, so if you're using a TriCaster, folks, what was the app called?
It was called something or other. Just look under TriCaster and wherever it says free.
And that's an iPad and iPhone app.
Yeah, it's an iPad app.
Do you know if there's an Android version?
I don't.
Okay, check it out if there is. All right, if you're running a TriCaster, have a look at that. That's it. Thank you very much, John. If you want to contact us, you can reach us at Veronica at agirlandagun.tv, and there is our Twitter at agirlandagun. You can also find us on Facebook /agirlandagun podcast and on YouTube /agirlandagun podcast. If you have a Pick My Brain question, get in touch with us. Otherwise, that's a wrap.